All right, everyone, I think we can get started. We've got a lot of people here. Some people are still coming, but we'll be sending out this recording and additional resources afterwards in case anyone shows up a little too late. But we've got a lot to get through today, so yeah, let's jump in. First of all, appreciate you all joining. Obviously, this COVID-19 pandemic has been wildly disruptive to people, businesses, industries all over the world, and schools, of course, are not exempt. We know everyone's been scrambling to adjust to this and provide the best learning and support to their students, families, and staff that they can. We at School Runner are also doing what we can to provide resources to our schools and our partners in particular. We want to serve as a resource for supporting everything that you guys are doing to support your own communities. So we have a curated selection of resources, most of which are not specific to our product, that can be helpful for transitioning your teams to remote work, for providing distance/online content and lesson plans, excuse me, and for discovering new free EdTech tools and more. We'll send that out after today's webinar as well. And so this webinar is going to focus on how a couple of innovative, high-achieving charter schools in New Orleans are facing the challenge of school closures and the sudden need for distance learning. We're lucky and very appreciative to have a couple of outstanding educators with us today. They'll be sharing insights straight from their schools and their experiences. So Elisabeth LaMotte-Mitchell is the principal at Paul Habans Charter School, and she'll be talking about the policies and practices that she's implemented at her school to adjust to COVID-19. And Forrest Cook is an English teacher at Rooted School, and Rooted has been using Google Classroom for a long time and are real pros at it, and Forrest is a pro among the pros. So he'll be talking about how they use and approach Google Classroom in detail. So each of these folks will have about 20-ish minutes of time, and then we'll have Q&A at the end. So speaking of questions, as we go along, please use the Q&A tab or the little Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. We'll get to these at the end, but please submit these questions as they come up to you, just to make sure that they're fresh on your mind, and we'll come back to them at the end and try to hit as many as we can. So without further ado, let's hear a brief intro from each of our presenters, and then we'll get into the presentations themselves. And so, yeah, really looking forward to it. So Elisabeth, welcome, thank you, and please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Elisabeth LaMotte-Mitchell. I'm the principal at Paul Habans Charter School here in New Orleans. I've been the principal here for 4 years. I've worked in the city for 10, and I'm excited to share some resources today, and I'll always be available at my email, which is on the screen, if you have follow-up questions for me.
Awesome, thanks so much, Elisabeth. Forrest, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Hey everyone, thanks for being here today. My name is Forrest Cook. This is my 7th year as an educator. I'm currently an English teacher as well as an instructional coach and the lead for data and assessment at Rooted School, which is a small single-site charter school here in New Orleans.
Awesome, thanks so much, Forrest. Okay, let's jump in. We'll hear from Elisabeth first. Elisabeth, take it away, and to everyone out there, please remember to submit your questions with the Q&A tab as they come along, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end.
All right, hi guys. Elisabeth again. I'm going to go through a presentation with just sort of what we've done here at Habans, giving you sort of the things we've learned along the way and some key takeaways. And I'm happy to share like examples of documents as well. So just let me know what you need. Okay, so a little bit about sort of like our timeline. We found out that school was going to be closed on March 13th, which was, I don't know, a few Fridays ago. We started planning for that early because we had a report card day that day, and we just knew that's where the direction we were going. So we had a little bit of a head start. By Monday, the 16th, we gave out our work and our computers. So we did work and computer pickup on Monday and Tuesday. We also started food service that same day, and we did a community store. We are now in a place where the state has asked us to limit our exposure, so we're limiting our food distribution. But we are doing like mental health services on Zoom, classes on Zoom. We are just adding more technology-based things as we go. And then, you know, we're just week by week planning as we go. I think my big lesson in this timeline is like just act. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like just get some stuff in kids' and parents' hands. In pre-K through 5th grade, what we did is we prepared 3 weeks of academic work in packets and workbooks. We use Great Minds, Eureka, Engage, New York Math, whatever you call it. So we had workbooks for that. We use CKLA phonics in the lower grade, so we had workbooks for that, and we use EL in 3-5, so we had workbooks there. So that put us ahead. We just sent those workbooks home with assigned pages, and then we made content-specific science and social studies projects that kids could do at home. We also sent home every student with a book, so they could do a book report. And we did differentiated work for students with IEPs, including speech. So there were speech packets and differentiated work and support for students with IEPs. That took us a long time in pre-K 5. This is what our cafeteria looked like that day. Teachers were also like sharpening pencils, trying to keep things labeled and organized. Every kid had an individual packet since some of the work was differentiated. We created like cover sheets. Our directors of curriculum and instruction did this, and then grade levels or teachers could amend those just to give parents an outline of the week at home. In 5th grade, this is an example. It's a little bit more complicated for ELA here because the ELA teacher had some specific assignments. This is a short video just to show you sort of like our work prep that we did. Other panelists, if you give me a thumbs up if it like you can hear it and it's playing. Oops.
We've made take-home work for every student. Here's a pre-K example. They have pencils in their folder. They have different assignments, 2 weeks worth of work for pre-K, and it's differentiated for kids. In 1st grade, a little bit of a different setup. Kids have a cover sheet. They have 3 pencils. They have account information for online options. We have Kids A to Z and Zern, so 2 different options, plus workbooks, pages from workbooks, different activities students can do. Some teachers used folders instead of bags. Same idea though. Each folder has all the materials they might need. In our self-contained special education rooms, everything's differentiated, so it's way more specific. They still have their online accounts. They also have notices, more specific work for students. This is an example of a guide so the parent knows what to help the student with. More specific work for specific students. Same thing for another special education class. 3rd through 5th grade is sending home math workbooks, ELA workbooks. We're sending home a book to every student. This student is reading that book, doing a book project. Every student has an assigned book. This student. They have some social studies projects, index cards and crayons, different projects and workbook pages. Again, books would be different for 5th grade. So they have their workbooks, their Zern, all those things. And then each student has a book, a little bit different. Some of them have the same book, but most have a different book, depending on their content for that level. And then in 6th, 7th, and 8th, we're giving out laptops to students that don't have laptops at home. Most of our students have internet access. We're working on that internet issue for students that don't. So every student that needs one will get a Chromebook and a charger. And then they have a cover sheet with directions for how to access Google Classroom. We've used it at the school before, so kids should be familiar, but in case they need directions. And then we have a chart with every class, the code for the class we just created, the teacher, the teacher's contact, and general information. So
that sort of got us into 6, 7, 8, but they're doing distance learning all online. We did 2 days of computer sign out to get computers to those students. We're still working on internet for families that don't have internet access. In our region, Cox is giving internet access, so we're promoting that to families that might need it. And then our district has purchased hotspots, so we're going to be trying to get those out, but that is a weakness. Like, internet access is going to be a weakness if you're doing online. We're using Google Classroom, Amplify Science, Edulastic Assessments, Zoom via Clever, so that we can set up like online classes using Clever as like a platform that we go between. And then we use Instagram a lot. So every grade level has its own Instagram, and they're posting sort of modeling videos there. We've used Google Classroom before, but not really like this. So we just got teachers like, get stuff up, let's see how it goes. Teachers are putting stuff up, they're making assignments and uploading videos that go with those assignments, so kids can watch the teacher video and then do the assignment. Our teachers are just trying that out, seeing how it goes. Some of our teachers are getting more familiar with this than others. There's ways that you can like upload a blank assignment and then require that every kid makes a copy of it, or when you assign it in Google Classroom, it'll make a copy, and then they can like turn in assignments that way. Teachers can give feedback. So we're just exploring every week what that looks like. And Google Classroom is our main go-to in 6th, 7th, and 8th. So here are my sort of like 5 keys to this whole process. The first is to have structures and schedules, just like we would in regular school. Split up roles and responsibilities on your staff. I'm a principal, so I'll talk from that lens. Clear communication to every stakeholder. Bring the joy. School is so much more than academics, so I want to talk a little bit about making sure we're addressing all needs of students, and then really have a growth mindset about this distance learning. It's not going to be perfect. It's going to be hard, but this is where we are, and this is what we all need to do. Structures and schedules. I would pick something that works for you and your staff. I'm managing a pre-K through 8th grade school, so I'm going to talk specifically about that age group. And this is the structure we came up with. We like alliteration here. So it's modeling Mondays, talk it out Tuesdays, what you've been doing Wednesdays, thinking Thursdays, and feedback Fridays. This kind of frames the week the way a lesson would be framed. The teacher models, kids and teachers talk about it, talk it out, kind of like turn-in talks or guided practice. What you've been doing Wednesday is accountability. So that would be if you're like aggressive monitoring to collect data in your classroom, that's our what you've been doing Wednesday. Thinking Thursdays is just students working independently, like get your work done, and then feedback from teachers on Fridays. We made some Instagram posts for these like themed days, and then that's helping us sort of provide kids and families a structure for every day. We're using Instagram a lot. I said here are just some screenshots of our Habans Lions 678 Instagram and our Habans 35 Instagram. Teachers are posting videos, 1 to 3 minute videos on here to do some modeling every Monday. We're posting announcements, updates on Instagram. So we're using that a lot, and we use that for every age group. To us, we're pushing families to get on Instagram who aren't, but the majority of our families are on Instagram. So we picked that social media outlet because that's where the majority of our students and families already are. I also thought about this for my staff. In Louisiana, we know we're closed for at least a month. which feels like a lot. And so I wanted to make sure I had a schedule and I was modeling for people how to still be doing work while also managing everything else going on. For a lot of our staff, that means having kids at home, their own kids that they're dealing with, and just having uncertainty, stress, sickness in their houses. So we've limited our work hours to about 10 to 2. And those are when we're having meetings or work time, but then other times folks can think of their own schedule. This is the schedule I made for myself. It's kind of funny, it includes things like wash my face, because sometimes I forget that, so I'm always trying to remind myself. But I added things like do yoga on YouTube, which is something I wouldn't normally do, just to show folks how I'm like managing my time and my stress through this difficult time. And teachers really liked that. This is a teacher who liked my schedule. She's alone during the shutdown, so I think it's helpful for her too to just sort of keep busy. And she sent me her version. So I think something like this could be helpful from the principal level. We also are still using Google Calendar. This is my Google Calendar. You can see we're holding for the school runner PD right now. Some of this doesn't match with the other schedule I made, but this is like day-to-day what I'm doing. And we're using Zoom, and you can schedule Zoom right on Google Calendar. Roles and responsibilities. I would just say from a principal's perspective, split this evenly amongst your staff. Right now, there could be a higher amount of labor on the teaching staff if you're trying to do these academic pushes, or the mental health staff if you're trying to do mental health check-ins like we are. So trying to spread other tasks evenly amongst your staff is really important. I have 113 people on my staff, and we're ensuring everyone is doing an equal amount of like 3 hours of work a day. Support staff, that would mean paraprofessionals, enrichment teachers, our discipline team, anybody who isn't managing a core academic content, a special education teacher who's still doing IEP meetings or something like that, are doing family support calls. So the way we did that is we divided our school not by students, but by families. This took some work up front, but we like combined every set of siblings. And that made it have less families. So we have 830 kids, but only 575 families at our school. We divided those among support staff, and they're calling families every Mondays and Wednesdays with like school announcements to offer support, to connect to resources. So they're like our family support team. And they log those calls directly in School Runner. We added a topic in School Runner communications called Family Support Call, so that all those calls can be logged and tracked by their supervisors. Teachers are then talking with students on Tuesday and Friday. So support staff are doing Monday, Wednesday. Teachers are either calling students or being available to students on Tuesdays and Fridays. And then the other days they have like planning, meetings on Zoom, stuff like that. Other people, like a lot of our ops team, are doing like the tech work, especially around Zoom, which takes some account management, and around getting all those Chromebooks out and then being available for tech support. And then just other roles like accountability. Their communication, again, this is from a principal's perspective, but it could apply to teachers as well. Be thinking about all your stakeholders. What I'm doing is sending a weekly email to my entire parent community. So we have emails for almost all of our parents. So I send a weekly email every Sunday with like updates and links and any information they might need. That's a normal tradition for me at the school for my staff. I send a Sunday email every Sunday to them. I've increased the amount of frequency I'm sending staff emails because we don't have like stand up or staff meetings or any time together. So I'm probably sending 2 whole staff emails a week with like information and updates, especially because things are moving quickly around like food service and other things I need to get out there. I have linked all those here. So if you ever want to see them, they're all through MailChimp, which is another service that I pay like $29 a month for. And I can send all these emails and track all these emails. I can track who opened them, how many times they opened them, what links they clicked on. So it's helpful for me for staff accountability and to know how I'm reaching parents. I just took some screenshots of one of my parent emails. So like, these are 3 different screenshots of 3 different parts of the email. I put a lot of information, a lot of visuals, that kind of stuff in there. And then here is some of the information I get from MailChimp. You can see, this is the email I sent on Sunday, and I took these screenshots yesterday. So it was delivered to 530 email addresses. So far, 353 people have opened it. So within 2 days, this was on Tuesday. So between Monday and Tuesday, that's a pretty good percentage of opens. And then I can see what time they opened, a lot more information. We're also using Zoom to have clear communication. So this is our 6-8 staff learning about Zoom on Zoom, and then just sort of like sharing a lot of stuff via Zoom. That's been helpful. It allows us to do trainings, and we're going to start doing classes as well on Zoom. So Zoom has been a great resource. It's free for all K-12 schools, and the free version allows you to do some different things. So I would invest in looking into that. Our data manager is awesome, but there are some like uploads and some other things you have to do, I think, to make it really useful. And if you already use Clever at your school, I suggest using Zoom through Clever. That's what we're doing. So kids actually never log into Zoom. They only log into Clever, and it coordinates that for them. It makes it just one touch. So they just log into Clever and go, oh, I need to go to Miss Smith's math class. They press one button and they're in her Zoom. So it's super easy. Bring the joy. We are trying to do things that we've done before at the school, but now we're trying to make them distance learning appropriate. So in the school, we have a Scholar of the Week program where every homeroom has a Scholar of the Week. In pre-K 5, they get these cool vests that they get to wear and be cool, and they get an award. In 6-8, they get these like pins that are really big in New Orleans. So they wear this special pin all week. Because we're distance learning now, we're just posting on Instagram our Scholar of the Week, and we're delivering pizza to their house as a reward for being Scholar of the Week. So just some joy, some positive encouragement and accomplishment. Spirit Weeks, these are some examples from other schools. We're planning to do our Spirit Week next week, but we love dressing up as a school community. Elementary schools should always do Spirity Weeks, I think. And so we're just thinking about some fun stuff kids can do at home and then post pictures of on Instagram to stay connected. And then we're doing enrichment challenges. This week, our challenge is the Play-Doh challenge. You should follow Paul Habans Charter School on Facebook and do the Play-Doh challenge if you want. But our art teacher put up a super simple recipe for Play-Doh that kids can make at home, of course, with their parents' permission. And the more videos we get there, it just is more increased joy and engagement. So those are really our ideas there. And then we're using social media a lot. We created a hashtag called Habans from Home, and kids and families are posting there. We're just trying to, make connections, post a lot, that kind of stuff. Lastly, I think I'm doing pretty well on time, is just to have a growth mindset, be innovative, be creative, be flexible. But I think two quotes I would leave you with. The first is from Carol Dweck, the author of Mindset. This is hard, this is fun. Have a positive mindset about this. Nobody's gonna be great at it yet. We're all trying it out. Just try it. See how much fun you can have trying something new. And then refuse to let perfect be the enemy of good. Do I think everything we're doing is perfect or reaching 100% of our students? No. Do I think it's better than just sitting back and doing nothing? Yes. So just do something. There are a lot of resources out there if you want to do paper packets. nonprofit organizations have put together weeks and weeks of paper packets you could just print and hand out. If you want to try Google Classroom, listen to Forrest talk and then try it out. But I think do something. Here I would say we are still providing all of our counseling minutes and mental health minutes. We're using Zoom for that as well, or the phone or FaceTime. And we are documenting that and keeping accurate records. We are offering differentiated work to every student with an IEP, either paper or in Google Classroom. And we're doing weekly special education check-ins with students. We haven't figured it all out, and I don't know anybody who has, but what we're trying to do is what's best for our students, and our SPED teachers are calling, communicating with parents of nonverbal students, giving them ideas. So we're working really hard to make sure those families and students feel supported, even though, of course, it's not everything it should be. So that's where we're at right now. Thanks.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Elisabeth. I, for one, am super impressed by how you and your school have adapted so quickly to this unprecedented situation. So thank you again for sharing. Very super helpful overview of how Paul Habans has been handling this. So now we have Forrest to dig into how he and his school have been using Google Classroom. Folks, remember, please use the Q&A tab to submit questions. We're getting some great ones coming in, and we're looking forward to answering those at the end. So Forrest, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Ethan. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Give me a second to get this set up. And panelists, can I get a thumbs up that you guys see my Google slide presentation? Awesome. All right. Once again, my name is Forrest Cook. I'm an English teacher here at Rooted, a small single-site high school. And I'm going to go over a little bit about how we use Google Classroom to facilitate self-directed learning. Just to get started, some of the key takeaways that I hope you get from this short presentation. First, consistency can accelerate onboarding. Second, your workflow for your teachers is going to provide student choice and accelerate the feedback that students get. Executive functioning in students is going to have to be taught. And in order to do that, universal design for learning is essential to teaching that executive functioning. Just to give you a quick overview of why Rooted started with self-directed learning. Our mission is to provide students with personal pathways to financial freedom. In speaking with industry partners here in New Orleans, as well as understanding how students need to be ready for college, we know that they need to have a highly adaptive use of technology in order to be successful either directly into the workforce or if they want to be successful to and through college. We also know that we need to meet kids where they are, and that one way of doing something is not going to work for every student. If we incorporate equity, diversity, and inclusion into our model, students should be able to have power and ownership over their learning. And when we started, we wanted to do a completely self-directed model, but what we learned is that students weren't getting enough small group and one-on-one support. So we've shifted to include a little bit more direct instruction in small groups, as well as some project-based learning planning into our curriculum. And I'll talk a little bit about how that's shifted even further into the virtual learning landscape. Thinking about onboarding students, one of the first things you should think about is standardizing your use across courses. By creating more opportunities for students to become comfortable with navigating the platform, it'll be easy for them to quickly adapt and continue using it. One other thing that we make sure we do is all of our support staff, coaches, student support for culture, they're all teachers on every Google Classroom as well, which allows them to quickly access and differentiate work for students as needed. As well as increased communication across our school. Creating a gradual release for students in order for them to build that comfortable access to Google Classroom is also essential. Starting off by modeling and then gradually releasing them as you would in a daily lesson also works really well for Google Classroom. And also remember that kids are more tech savvy than ever right now. You can use this to advantage, especially at our school. We find those students that quickly adapt and then use them as support for other students. And it helps us get a little bit quicker into the platform and create more comfortability for the students. Here's an example of what some gradual release could look like. These are two playlists, which are basically a syllabus of all the assignments a student would have to complete in order to earn or master a unit in one of the courses that I teach. On the left, you'll see the first badge or unit only has a few assignments. There's about 6 there. And this is intended not just to get kids used to the type of work they'll do, but also how to navigate the platform, how to revise and submit work, how to work in groups. And then you'll see on the right, the badge 2 playlist is much more extensive. There are many more individual assignments, many more group assignments, as well as all of the quizzes and assessments that students will have to take throughout the unit. We want to get them started on the left and then build them up to the right through that gradual release. Thinking about the personal workflow that I use in order to facilitate self-directed learning, one thing that I use are the playlists that I just saw. That's just going to be a list of all assignments and activities that students have to complete to earn the badge. If they know what's coming, they can do a little bit more work on creating an agenda and prioritizing their courses in order to be successful. The assignments that I use, we do a weekly group assignment, which is shifted a little bit in the virtual learning landscape. But we also do an individual writing assignment in English at the end of each week. We want to be able to facilitate collaboration through Google Docs and Google Classroom, but we also want to be able to assess individual mastery, and that's where we landed on this structure. And then finally, for grading, all the assignments that students submit are graded each week. One thing that we believe is that students need to be able to revise and resubmit work so they can learn from their mistakes to truly master content necessary to be successful. And so after submitting for the first time, a student can go back and revise and then have something regraded. And that allows us to make sure that they're mastering that content. This should be an example of what a badge would look like on Google Classroom. And as you can see, I have every assignment up through this week, as well as I've prepared the badge assessment for the end of the unit that they'll be taking next week. I haven't pushed that to them yet, but I will probably push it to a few students this week who have already completed all their assignments. And if we dive into an assignment, you'll notice a couple of things here. First off, on the right, you'll see that this assignment was only pushed to 14 students. This is a group assignment. The way that we set this up is that students are identified as group leaders, and they'll be responsible for taking the copy of this assignment and sharing it with their group. They'll also be responsible for helping facilitate the small group discussion to complete the work, and then they'll be responsible for turning it in on time. This looks a little bit different with the 14 students that have submitted and been graded on this assignment versus the next assignment, where you'll see that 30 students have submitted this and 25 still need to work. What Google Classroom really allows us to do is target our feedback, not just on content, but also on soft skills like executive functioning, time management, and prioritization. And so I've got 25 students that I need to check in with to see what barriers exist to them completing this work. When it comes to feedback, one of the easiest functions that I've found when grading assignments on Google Classroom is the to-do list. Up there on the left, that little hamburger, you can open up the to-do list, and then you can sort by the courses that you teach. And so you'll see here that this is my English 1 course, and I've got all of the assignments that are currently in my class. You'll notice a couple things here. First off, there's an assignment that's not due until later that some students have already submitted and are waiting to receive feedback on. And then you'll also see that there's an assignment that is past due that many students haven't submitted. And this allows me to see how I need to adjust my pacing, where I need to target my feedback, and then also what other barriers I need to identify that exist to students moving this work forward. At Rooted, we've determined that there's a couple things that have made us pretty successful in facilitating self-directed learning. One of those things is the adaptability and improvements that Google Classroom continually develops. This year alone, they've developed a system called originality reports, which is basically just a plagiarism checker. What this does is it allows that any written assignment that a student submits on Google Docs through Classroom will be run through a plagiarism checker compared against not just the internet in its entirety, but also your local server. And this prevents students from copying each other's work and allows you to know that their work is authentic and it's their own. Another adaptability that came last year was something called the comment bank. And this is when you're giving feedback to students. Oftentimes, we've identified that students have a common misconception, and instead of having to type out every piece of feedback over and over again, you can store the same piece of feedback that you can then easily apply to multiple student assignments as you're giving feedback. And then finally, one thing that's been helpful this year that they've developed is the use of rubrics. These rubrics can be used both in math, science, history, and ELA to assess students on a broader range of skills. I know in math, some of our teachers use them to assess the progression of skills necessary to master content. And in ELA, it really, really works well for me grading students on their writing, particularly on their essays. Another success that Google Classroom allows is collaboration. Group work is part of what's necessary for students to be successful both in the workforce as well as in college. And so we facilitate that by using shared documents, which I mentioned a little bit earlier, assigning a group leader to manage that shared document. But then we're also able to give feedback within that document to students as they answer questions either individually or as a group. And finally, feedback. We can target and individualize feedback not just on content, but also on soft skills using Google Classroom. It's been very effective for us to take an assignment and only grade on one aspect of a content or skill, or look at it holistically and give feedback across the entire assignment, including how problems have been scaffolded, particularly in math, like I mentioned before, to see where does that gap exist where the student needs to learn the next step in order to overcome and master that content or that skill. A couple surprises that we've run into is in our use of deadlines. Some students will enter into their grade level with highly developed executive functioning skills that are appropriate for their developmental level, but many students are going to need support to develop that executive functioning. And what we've found is that the principles of universal design for learning embedded in student-facing materials helps build that skill. But most importantly, we found that one-on-one mentoring and coaching is going to be essential. Nothing is going to replace quality curriculum and quality instruction. Students will be able to move through some documents on their own and master learning goals, but teachers who are able to both design, plan, implement, and then give feedback on those will be essential for the success of your students. And so you'll have to keep that in mind as you consider rolling out Google Classroom. In order to build executive functioning, one thing that we've implemented across our school is the use of daily or weekly to-do lists. What you can see here is a list of tasks that students should complete during 1 week of class. This includes a reading, answering questions, answering a group and individual assignment, as well as use of our reading intervention platform, Achieve 3000. But you also notice on there that they have the option to revise and resubmit missing or failing work, and then complete an article of their choice. By incorporating student choice, this also helps to build that executive functioning skill because they can prioritize what needs to happen first, second, and third. Speaking of universal design for learning, a couple of those principles that you should see on student-facing materials include a multiple means of representation, multiple means of action expression, and multiple means of engagement. When we think about multiple means of representation, that's looking at what students are learning. How are they going to access that? Are they going to read something? Are they going to watch a video? Maybe they'll listen to the teacher lecture. But providing multiple ways for students to access the learning will meet the diverse learning needs of your students. Multiple means of action and expression is the how. How are students going to show you that they've mastered that content? This can work in the same way of how they learned it. Are they going to tell you? Will they record a short video? Will they collect images and describe how those images relate to a concept or topic? Will they write a paragraph or execute a function in math? All of these are going to allow students to build executive functioning by describing how they've mastered that content in different ways. And then finally, the multiple means of engagement. The why of the learning is essential to self-directed learning. Students need to know why they're doing each assignment. One of the ways you can accomplish this is by allowing students to set goals at the beginning of their assignments related to both the learning goal, but also maybe their larger goals for where this leads to their next step in their academic career, or maybe towards a profession that they wish to attain after they leave high school. An example of what some of these principles look like on a lesson is here in one of our world history lessons. You can see at the top that the goal for learning is that students will comprehend the historical roots and present day implications of the ongoing crisis in US-Iran relations. That's a really large goal. And so it's been broken down into some learning objectives that are going to show show students how they're going to reach that goal. They're going to review some content, considers the history of the relations. They'll develop some media source analysis skills, as well as analyze some different perspectives on the current situation. And then next, you'll see that students are going to see how they're going to do it. On the first day, there's going to be a 15-minute read or multiple means of access listen to a short excerpt. Then there's going to be a class discussion, and then finally they'll have an opportunity to show mastery by answering prompts below. And you'll see that multiple means of expression are also included in this document through how they'll show mastery. You'll see that students can write, they can collect images, or they can just give a quick oral report on what they've learned for each prompt. As we've thought about adapting to full virtual learning over the last 2 weeks, here are a few quotes from some of the teachers at Rooted on how they've adapted the use of Google Classroom, as well as some other strategies for virtual learning. First is Miss Livney, one of our math teachers. She's included recordings of their virtual sessions linked to each assignment. That's been very helpful for students. We hold class, each class meets for 45 minutes every day, and we record those on Zoom and then attach those assignments, or attach those videos to the assignments. That allows any student that missed or had some connectivity issues to go back and see what work was done throughout the lesson, or just to go check back and see an answer that maybe they didn't get correct and they wanted to see what some other students were thinking about. Mr. Fuller, our science teacher, said he's added separate Google Classroom assignments for quizzes so students can know that they took a quiz on a certain day if they weren't able to attend the virtual class session. And Google Classroom provides some really simple connectivity options for either creating Google Forms quizzes or allowing other apps to access the platform very easily to post assignments. And finally, Miss B, one of our tech teachers, she's been using admit tickets as a form of accountability and attendance tracking. Because it's so hard for kids to get up on their own, they know in Miss B's class that if they're not there in the first 5 minutes and don't complete that Google quiz, they won't be counted as getting those points for the day, but they'll also be marked as tardy, which is a huge incentive for them to be there and take that quiz. So once again, a couple of the key takeaways that I hope you learn from this. One, consistency is going to accelerate your onboarding. Your workflow is going to provide student choice and accelerate feedback from teachers. Executive functioning in your students is going to have to be explicitly taught, and that can be taught through universal design for learning, which is essential for executive functioning. I'm going to share out this slide deck in a little bit, and at the last slide, I've got a couple resources. If you're just getting started in Google Classroom, I found a nice 20-minute tutorial that goes through the basics on how to set up a classroom, how to create assignments, and how to give feedback. There's also an article from Google that, about how they've adapted to distance learning and some functionality there with Google Classroom. And there's also some links to some platforms that link very easily with Classroom. Khan Academy can be used for math or social studies. Common Lit has ELA assignments and assessments from grades 3 through 12. And EdgeElastic is a really good assessment tool that has high quality question banks. All of these tools have buttons that import directly into Google Classroom to easily set up assignments for your students. I personally use Common Lit as an assessment tool often for a couple of different reasons. One is it's easy to import it as an assignment to Google Classroom, but also that assignment also then imports very quickly into School Runner, so students are aware of their grades almost immediately. If you have any questions, please reach out. I've got my email address here on this last slide, fcook@rootedschool.org, for anything else that I can help with adapting to Google Classroom or distance learning. And thank you all for attending.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Forrest. Super helpful dive into how Rooted is using Google Classroom and how other schools can learn from what you guys have been doing and take some awesome lessons away. We've got some really good questions coming in throughout this webinar for both of our presenters. So thank you to everyone who's been submitting those. And so we're gonna start getting to those questions right now. Abby, School Runner School Happiness Coordinator, will be moderating here. So Abby, take it away. Abby may be frozen at the moment. So let me get started here. We've had several questions going back to Elisabeth, we've had several questions about how you are differentiating work for students with IEPs and how you're making sure that the right students are getting the right materials. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I saw those. Okay, so I guess for us, we have a few different models of special education in our school. So it would really depend on what you have and what you offer. We have 2 self-contained rooms for students with maybe low incidences or severe and profound, any of those terms, like nonverbal, autistic, things like that. Those special education teachers created individual folders or buckets of things to go home with those students. So we have one student working on their letter sounds, right? So they sent home little bean bags with S and T and V on it and activities parents could do to practice that. We have kids that are still like being potty trained, stuff like that, working on life skills. So in those cases, the special education teacher created, and we had a day, we did Friday the 13th, our staff worked to create this, created individualized 3 to 4 weeks of instruction for students with high needs, special needs. In our other places, we have what we call like resource math or resource ELA, which we pull out, or we have inclusion math and ELA. So we have like inclusion and resource. For resource, kids that get pulled out during that math or ELA block, they either have a separate Google Classroom. So 8th grade math resource has its own Google Classroom with 6 kids in it and the special education teacher, and she's doing her own videos. In 3-5, the resource teacher modified the work or sent slightly different work, or they might be 1 unit behind or something like that. So that work was provided. For inclusion, we're just doing check-ins via phone or Skype or Zoom, whatever we're using. So like, it just depends on the student. And then for speech, our speech language pathologist made packets for every student, and that went home with the other work, which is just like speech work. So that's sort of how we're thinking about it.
All right, next question. For Forrest, for attendance purposes, you touched on the one teacher that uses tickets for attendance, but does Classroom have a feature where they can, students can click to record their daily or class attendance each day, or how are you tracking attendance right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now we're using School Runner to track class by class attendance because we have folded multiple class sections into one virtual session. We've gone from about 20 students per class to about 50. Our special education teachers are holding their own sessions to make sure that we're documenting special education minutes. So currently we're using class attendance on School Runner. I would suggest using either like an admit ticket through Google Forms, or one of the other structures that some of our teachers are using is they've included Poll Everywhere, which is an extension you can add to Google Slide presentations. And they'll have their students log in and just answer a quick question. This morning I used one that was just a single word to describe how they're feeling today. And I let them know that answering that poll will allow me to take attendance once the virtual session is completed. But there isn't currently an option in Google Classroom for students to like check in that they've accessed the platform.
Abby, could I add just like in the state of Louisiana, the governor has relaxed seat time and attendance requirements. So I would just check what your state requires because there are no attendance requirements right now in the state of Louisiana. Our Department of Ed and governor have worked on that. So like, I'm not stressed at all about attendance or grades or anything. I'm also a K-8 person. High school's a little bit different. So they are doing some attendance stuff, but like, don't waste time if you don't need to on that.
Great. Forrest, this goes back to you. Do you find that it's easier to assign work for students week by week, to-do lists and submit through the due dates, or do you think it's easier to have classes daily through Classroom and Zoom?
That's a really good question and something that we kind of go back and forth on as a team. I've found that, like I said, there's some students that already have those highly developed executive functioning skills. And for them, what I'll do is I'll use the assign only to certain students function to push work as they complete work. One thing that I don't want to do is overwhelm students who can get very nervous about the amount of work they have to complete. And so by rolling it out 1 week at a time, students, even when they're behind, can see kind of how far behind they are and what's necessary to catch up or to move forward. But I still am able to roll that out to certain students individually if they're ready for the next assignment.
Great. I think we have time for a couple of more questions. How have you been intervening with non-responsive families or students regarding packet pickup or participation in Zoom?
We did packet pickup for 2 days, and then because we're doing food distribution, we're a food distribution hub as well. We've had packets available to families that didn't come on those first 2 days. Mostly we're using like Instagram, phone, robocalls, robotext, emails to contact people. And we're making every effort we can. But again, like I would say, like we're not going to get 100% of work completed. And if that's your goal, you're going to set yourself up for failure. So my goal is like 80%. This is our first time doing Google Classroom. We had 76 kids in 6th grade and 42 of them turned in something. I was like, that's great for week 1. Like, set your bar low and then like work up from there. Like, you're not going to get 100%. Just do what you can.
This one's for Forrest, probably with Google Classroom. Are there safeguards on Classroom so that students do not access inappropriate websites?
Not that I know of through Classroom specifically, although we are a one-to-one technology school, and so we sent our Chromebooks home with every student. And so there are some safeguards that your IT department can add onto how they access the Chromebook. So all of our students need to log in with their rooted.org email address, which then puts in those safeguards so students aren't able to access illicit or inappropriate material on the internet. But I would caution against, rolling things out without kind of checking in with your lawyer, your HR department, or whoever can give you some clear guidelines on what needs to be necessary for students to have that access, and as well as privacy concerns for video conferencing, making sure that all of your Zoom conferences with students are private or require a password will be essential to make sure that you're meeting those privacy concerns.
For Elisabeth, for your 6-8 teachers, how have you handled supporting your staff with a wide variety of technological capabilities and skill sets?
Yeah, we have an operations manager, and she's really taken on like the Google Classroom and Chromebooks. So she's managing like tech issues and things like that for kids and for teachers on the Chromebooks or in Google Classroom. And then we have a data manager, and she's managed like Zoom, Clever, all of that. So they have been sort of our experts. And then we have a technology teacher. She's an enrichment teacher. She teaches tech. And so she's just been a really good resource for our staff. I would say mostly we're just troubleshooting like over the phone. I had a staff member for like 2 hours, couldn't get Zoom audio to work. Finally, after 2 hours, I was like, restart your computer. She had not done that, and restarting her computer worked. So like, I don't know, you're just gonna tell people to restart stuff, talk them through it on the phone. It's a learning curve, but like Forrest said, kids are pretty with it. Like most of our staff is able to figure it out. And then we're only doing Zoom for mental health check-ins and for 6-8. So we're sort of limiting the amount of tech support needed.
For getting materials into the hands of students and parents, what advice would you give for effective distribution?
So here are some like things we had to take into account. In Louisiana, it was required to be like outside. They couldn't come in. So we had set up everything in that cafeteria I showed you. And then basically we had a team of like runners. So outside we would get the student's name, and then we would say it over a mic into our cafeteria, and then those people would get that work and bring it out. I would say don't do individualized work if you knew you were planning for this. Do like grade level packets and then like SPED specific supports, I guess, for kids that need it. I'm not exactly sure, but probably set up outside. That's the best advice. Have it on tables, being as orderly as you can. We did 2 days of pickup. So we did Monday and Tuesday, 9 to 2. We got, I think, like 85% of our families those days. So I think really advertising those 2 days, trying to get word out helped. And then we were offering Chromebooks for 6-8. So I think parents wanted to come to get the Chromebook. So that sort of also helped. I would say 2 days, lots of advertising, and thinking about doing it outside so that you're protecting your staff and your community.
Yeah, very, very important. Safety first for everyone in these wild times. This is about all the time we have for today's webinar. Thank you to all our attendees for taking time out and to attend today and to tune in. Thank you for the questions and engagement that you've shown. Thank you especially to Elisabeth and to Forrest for sharing your time and knowledge for us. We hope you guys continue to have success throughout this trying, wild situation. So on behalf of Sarah, School Runners Director of Customer Success, Abby, School Runners School Happiness Coordinator, myself, Ethan Martin, the School Support Coordinator and Product Owner, and the rest of the School Runner team, we thank you again, and please take care, stay safe, and to everyone out there, look for a follow-up email with this recording and additional resources. Thanks again. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.